Like the Alaska book, Mother Goose. I know exactly what it's like to be addicted to the very constant overstimulation that was draining me. To habitually be reaching for the very things that were causing information overload and restlessness in my soul. I craved a more peaceful baseline instead of the constant noise background that was always going on in my head. But it was almost like I was too distracted to think about how distracted I was and how that was actually robbing me of my life even while I was living it. Everything came to a head when I became a new mom, and I think that this happens for a lot of moms because there's kind of a tipping point, because a lot of us go into motherhood already at capacity. Our brains are a cluttered, anxious, overwhelmed space. Though for me that tipping point was painful, it was the catalyst to radically change my life. If you're new here, hi, I'm Jess, and I am extremely passionate about helping women cultivate contentment exactly where they are. Today, I want to share with you a few things that I did to help eliminate that constant overstimulation that so many of us are dealing with and find more peace, joy, and presence in my life. Honestly, this entire journey kicked off when I did something kind of extreme, but I was really desperate for change. Around the time my daughter was about 6 or 8 months old, I did a year-long TV entertainment fast. That means no streaming, no Hulu, no Netflix, no Gilmore Girls or The Office on in the background while I did the dishes, no binging the latest limited series. Since I was a kid, I would often choose to escape from my life in other people's books or shiny new adventurous movies or TV shows. Anything that held the allure of something more interesting than my own ordinary life. And I noticed that in difficult times in my life, even as an adult, I would often escape in this way. I would find myself gravitating towards other people's lives, towards whatever Hollywood had to offer. You know when you do a taste testing of any kind, they always have like a palate cleanser in between the tastings so that you can reset your system to allow you to fully experience whatever you're gonna eat next and all of its complexities and flavors. The TV fast was like the palate cleanser of my life. I don't think I realized how deeply the entertainment that I was consuming was leading to discontentment in my life. Whether that was an increased amount of physical insecurity just because I was constantly exposed to perfectly lit, makeup Hollywood actresses all the time. But the largest way it affected me was that it dulled the allure and the beauty of ordinary, everyday moments. It made the mundane moments in my life seem not interesting. It's kind of like if you're raised on a diet of hyper palatable processed foods, the first time you have an apple, it might take some adjustment. Even though that apple's better for you, it's more sustainable to live on food like that. But removing that hyper palatable, overstimulating, otherworldly entertainment from my life was like the palate reset that I needed to appreciate the beauty of the apple. Within the first month of that fast, I noticed that I started to enjoy everyday moments a lot more. Tiny, ordinary moments became better than anything Hollywood entertainment had to offer because it was real and it was here. I noticed better sleep, better moods, less nightmares, less fear because I wasn't exposed to as many scary things. I started to experience God's presence as not something that was far away, but here with me in my everyday life. And my relationship with Christ became much more intimate. Removing the hyper-palatable and fake Hollywood narratives from my life enabled my eyes and my heart to adjust to the beauty found in my own real world. We have a TV still, we watch movies, we engage with entertainment now. It's just a vastly different relationship. Not just what we watch, but how we engage with it. And honestly, for the first time in my life, I actually feel like there's so many other things that I would rather do than watch TV. Seeing the radical change that adjusting my TV intake did in my life kind of sparked my desire to make a lot of other changes. And this change in particular had the greatest effect on my mood and my irritability levels, especially when it came to parenting, and that is quitting social media entirely. I danced around this for many years. I would take weekends off, I put boundaries on, I tried the whole moderation thing. Sometime last year, I just decided it was not for me and I got off of it completely. When overstimulation, that cluttered brain feeling, that anxiety, the fear, the irritability, when that's your baseline for so long, it's really difficult to tell what is making it worse and what is contributing to it because that's all you know. But as I started removing things, in my entertainment fast, I started to see that there was another way to feel. There was another baseline to have. I could see then what was making it worse and what was making it better. And social media 1,000% made it worse. This is why Cal Newport in his book Digital Minimalism talks about doing a complete 30-day digital detox, completely removing all optional technology, because it allows you to establish that baseline so that you can see how you're responding when you add things back in. Something else that he talks about in the same book is getting very clear on your values and beliefs, and that your use of technology should work its way back from those, not the other way around. And for most people, if you're like me, you're on social media because it's like kind of like a fear of missing out. It's like, well, it's so accessible, you know, why not having it? There's like this illusion of all these opportunities you'd be missing out on if you didn't have it. Better to be on than not was basically kind of my thought process. And when I went back to my values, my highest priorities being my faith, my family, my relationships, social media did not necessarily produce fruit in my life in those areas. And at worst, it impeded them. I got rid of it completely. And when the urge to check the apps went away after those like first couple weeks, I noticed so much more stillness in my life. But the biggest thing I noticed came to my relationship with my daughter. Toddlers will constantly want to come up to you, they want to share everything with you, they want to show you everything. I stopped feeling as much like those were interruptions. I didn't even have to be on my phone. I could have been ruminating on something I saw on social media for like an hour. I would be in my own world. I was not here with her. And when she would come up to me, I couldn't help but feel this feeling like I was getting interrupted. And that will lead to you feeling more on edge, a little bit more irritable, more harsh than you want to be. Getting off social media lessened that immensely. It allowed me to be here with her more. So I felt immensely more receptive to her interruptions, which is really just her sharing her life with me. I might start crying. It is of the highest value to me that I reflect God's heart in the way that I parent her. And in the same way I can always run to the Lord, and He is always receptive to me. I never want her to feel like she's a burden or that she's an interruption to me. That in of itself was worth its weight in gold. It might seem extreme, but for me, moderation was not the answer. It was actually just supremely satisfying to get rid of it completely. Around this all blended of a journey, I started applying the same need for simplicity in my direct environment, not just in my technology. I have always struggled with a sort of discontentment about my physical home. You know, for the longest time, my husband and I were renting, and so I was kind of like, what's the point of pouring into this place? Like, it's not even ours. Never took ownership of it. And then when we bought the house we had now, we were still really up in the air about like whether we were going to be in this area long term, what we were going to do. Long story short, there was always an excuse in my heart to not really invest and put roots in where we were living. I did not realize the effect that it was having on me, on my life, my heart, until around the time my daughter turned 1, and I just felt really convicted that here I was, my husband and I talking about like when we could get a bigger yard for her, and when we might move to this area, and what my life might look like over here, you know, all these shiny baubles over here. And I wasn't even stewarding what we had been given in the here and now. I began to make some connections between the amount of physical clutter I had and how overwhelmed I was feeling on a day-to-day basis as a mom. You know, I was spending more time than ever at home, and I really started recognizing how deeply your home could either be a source of haven from the world or its own source of chaos and overstimulation. I think it might be the minimal mom who says this, but to basically look at your belongings as inventory, and that you are a manager of that inventory. I went through my entire house, slowly but surely, decluttering every nook and cranny, massively decreasing the amount of items that we owned and the amount of things that I had to manage. And what I noticed was that it became easier to keep a clean home, which is a huge burden lifted from my mental clutter. But even more than just how much easier it was to keep it clean and take care of it, I noticed I began to pour a lot more TLC into it. I started to wash my sheets more often. I really loved cutting flowers from around my neighborhood and putting it on the table. All these little touches that I never thought to do. I just, in my head was like, what's the point? Now, I actually really love doing those things. I have a weekly cleaning schedule. I like to clean my house. I love the feeling of taking care of something that is valuable to me. Pouring my TLC into this place and watching it go from a source of constant overstimulation to a source of peace and joy and goodness in our life has been such a blessing for my entire family. A large part of my overstimulation, that constant feeling of being pulled into a million different directions, being distracted and frazzled, a big part of that came from my addiction to being busy, hurried, and overscheduled. I preferred packed schedules because it made me feel distracted and provided a false sense of productivity in the day. And as someone that can so easily tie my worth to my productivity, in my head, if I was in motion constantly, I must be going somewhere, right? This was amplified when I became a mom because I think subconsciously I dealt with a lot of narratives that are lies. I made the transition from working to being home, and I don't think enough women talk about that, but if you were someone that put your identity in tangible things that you could produce, and now you're at home taking care of a child where a lot of your work might be repetitive, small, no one really sees it, you can have kind of a crisis of identity and fall into the lie of thinking that the work you're doing is not enough or it doesn't matter. I think I just thought this is what mom life looks like. You know, like I just packed her schedule. We went to museums, we did park dates, we did play dates, we had people over. I was constantly taking her somewhere. It was like in my effort to create a childhood for her, I was kind of robbing her of it. I'm very intentional now to balance times we're going out and play dates and park dates and things like that with just time spent at home, doing nothing, putzing around the yard, walking around the neighborhood, making sourdough. I noticed that she had less meltdowns, her digestion and her appetite improved. It does entail sometimes saying no to good things, but it's ultimately for the best thing, the well-being of our family. A great book I read on this is called Simplicity Parenting, and I will link it below. John Mark Comer has a quote, "Attention precedes devotion. What we behold, we become." Where we are pouring our attention into, whether we like it or not, is forming our value system. Over the past few years, I have moved from being a much more mindless consumer to a more minimalist, intentional heart posture. I am not perfect by any means. I have not arrived. I don't even know what that would mean, but I have not done it. But the changes I've seen have been extremely encouraging for myself and my family. Now, whether it's entertainment that we want to consume, an app that I want to be on, where we're spending our money, I try to ask myself, what devotion is this forming in my heart? It can be a difficult question, a convicting one, definitely a revealing one, but so helpful for me. I hope this video encouraged you and helped you or gave you some ideas, things to chew on in some way. I make videos on things like minimalism, slow living, holistic health. If you are into that, I'd love to see you join our community, and I will see you in the next video.